Success! Oh, hi. Glad you're here. I'm glad to be with you. Especially now, at the end of these 40 plus videos in these past months. For no particular reason other than restoring my own memories and perspectives of the most impactful films on my life. This being last year, 2022. A lot of these I looked up easily because they made my list on Letterboxd of the best films of 2022, so there's that. But I swear, all these videos, I feel like I've talked about every movie of all time, all at once. Where shall we start? Sure, let's start with Avatar. I don't like Avatar. I don't like the first one at all. I remember seeing it in theaters and the 3D was amazing, and then seeing it at home and being like, this is boring. Mainly because I don't like any of the characters in it. Don't care for Avatar. But the sequel, being such a fan of 3D, I had to at least see for myself in theaters. And I liked it a lot more than the first one, that's for sure. Mainly because the characters I didn't like in the first one weren't in the second one as much. And I really liked all the new characters, but especially Kate Winslet. Pregnant Kate Winslet in Avatar: The Way of Water is worth the price of admission and the 3-hour runtime. It's kind of crazy that James Cameron, I mean, I wouldn't put it past James Cameron, but he made a movie where the final hour is just one big action sequence, but so I enjoyed like the last 2 hours a lot more than the first hour, but give me the Kate Winslet cut. If I ever rewatch that movie, I'm just going to skip to her parts. Even as a blue alien, she's still Kate Winslet. Anywho, White Noise. White Noise was by far one of the best films I saw last year. That movie blew my mind. You got Adam Driver, you've got Greta Gerwig, which I wasn't very familiar with her acting. And she's amazing. And that movie's amazing. That movie changed my perspective on life. And yeah, so talk about impactful. I mean, White Noise is I could do a book report on that movie. I guess it would be an essay. But White Noise on Netflix is absolutely phenomenal, very underrated and overlooked. And it's like three different movies. You know, first hour's this, and then it's this, and then it's that. But it's absolutely phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. Moonfall, Ron Emmerich, you know, back to his form. I enjoyed Moonfall, especially the world building and the mythology of it all. With the end there, the story it was telling and the answers we were given, it was very reminiscent of the sequel to Independence Day. But I've always wanted, you know, a whole franchise of that kind of a story, which we'll never get. But I just thought that everyone wrote off Moonfall as a ridiculous piece of garbage. It's not great or anything, but I thoroughly enjoyed watching it, and I really, like I said, liked the mythology. That's what She Said. Wait, no. She Said is a movie about that walking skin tag Harvey Weinstein and how these very brave female reporters took him down, took him out, took him, did their stuff. So a very engaging watch. I always enjoy true stories like that, especially about reporters and getting to the bottom of something. But I just love imagining that piece of garbage is in prison. So especially since he's responsible for Shakespeare in Love taking Best Picture Oscar away from Saving Private Ryan. So Mr. Harvey Weinstein. Barbarian. Barbarian was a pleasant surprise. Everyone was like, just watch Barbarian. Don't know anything about it. Know as little as possible. Just watch Barbarian. And I did. Justin Long is amazing. And then, of course, you get to like the middle of the movie and it's like, what? This is insane. This is like nothing I've ever seen. I'm having so much fun. And then I just didn't really care for the ending. The ending was a bit much, over the top, a little too cheesy without being like tongue in cheek cheesy, just being serious yet just kind of bad. So I didn't really care for it overall, but it was one heck of a memorable watch. There's no doubts there. Like, holy crap. That's a hard one to shake. But like the very, very end of that movie, I was like, meh. It just turns into a generic film when everything up until that was so original. And I hate it when movies fall apart in the end. They're giving you the best thing, and then they just don't stick the landing. Speaking of the ending of a movie changing your life, Men. Yeah, what a great title for a film. Now, I was a huge fan of this director. As I've discussed in a previous video, Annihilation is like my favorite sci-fi film of all time. Period. So when I found out that this guy is going to make a new movie, I was in. I saw the trailer. I mean, it's A24. You can't go wrong with A24. And the trailer was astounding. I'm like, okay, this ought to be interesting. So I watched that in theater. As a manager of a movie theater, most movies I see a couple of days before they're released, and I watch them by myself, which I love. But Men, if you haven't seen Men, then you have no context whatsoever. Trust me. If you have seen Men, then you know exactly how traumatized I am from that film. I believe I did a review on this channel. I think it's still there. Look it up maybe. Of how I needed therapy after that movie. Because the ending of that film has some of the most grotesque, disturbing imagery I've ever seen in my life. Just, I can't shake it. Just thinking about it now. Great film. I believe I gave it 5 stars on Letterboxd because it's a perfect masterpiece that made me feel something, which great movies should do. But I did not want to feel those things or see those things whatsoever. It was, like I said, if you know, you know. It's... Spoiler alert, I don't need to see a man giving birth to a man, giving birth to a man, giving birth to a man. Talk about an essay. Let's have somebody break that film down. Holy shnikey. Oh! I shouldn't have even brought it up. Now I'm thinking about it. F that movie. One of those, great movie that you'll never watch again. Whew, I'm tempted. Someday I will, I'm sure. But at least I'll be prepared. And then I'll have to pray. Pray! Haha, see? Nice segue. Pray. Not really. Prey, the Predator film that was released on Hulu. Absolutely fantastic. The main actress was probably how most people discovered her, but I was a huge fan of her on a show called Legion, one of the greatest television programs I've ever seen in my life. She also had a small appearance on Reservation Dogs, another phenomenal television program. But Prey, I was very surprised by how good that movie was. And then upon rewatch, 2 and 3, I appreciated it even more. Prey is absolutely phenomenal. What a great film. And I love how it tied into Predator 2, my favorite Predator film. I love Predator 2. Bill Paxton, rest in peace. Gary Busey. Yeah, great movie. The Concrete Jungle. Oh my gosh. And to think I haven't even eaten. And to think I'm supposed to be finding this Easter egg on Letterboxd, the scavenger hunt. And I know it's related to this actress in this movie, but I don't know. I know where to look, I just can't find it. People always say, oh, the app is, gotta use, whatever. That's neither here nor there. The Menu. I was so pleasantly surprised by The Menu. It kind of went under my radar. I was like, okay, the trailer looks intriguing, but they implied it was like a horror film. I wouldn't call The Menu a horror film. It's more of a psychological thriller and a commentary, which we got that, in Triangle of Sadness. Ooh, I don't have Triangle of Sadness on here, but that was quite something. I just, again, didn't think it stuck the landing. But The Menu I eventually saw after, so many rave reviews and then seeing a couple of minutes while cleaning theaters. And then watching it, I was absolutely delighted. I absolutely loved it. And then I watched it again, and then I watched it again, and then I bought it. I watched it with my son. He loved it. We ate delicious cheeseburgers while watching it. But that movie is brilliant. That's a perfect freaking movie. I think one of the best movies I've ever seen. The Menu is so phenomenal in every way, shape, and form, from every technical aspect. Every actor. I don't even like Anya Taylor-Joy, but I like her in that. And Nicholas Hoult, oh my god, he's so good in that. John Leguizamo, and of course Ralph Fiennes. I have the poster for that. I had it up for a while, and I loved how the poster was one of those posters where so many crucial things that happen in that film are depicted on the poster, but you don't realize it until you've seen the movie. And that's when I was like, I gotta get that poster. There's so many things in the background of that poster. Like before you see the movie, you think that old guy's laughing or something. And then you see the movie and you realize, oh, that's when he's getting his, spoiler alert, finger cut off. Such a phenomenal film. Such a phenomenal film. I can't rave enough about The Menu. Definitely was on my top 10 best of the year. I believe the rest of these movies were. Well, maybe not all of them. What the heck is this? I don't know. I'm going to have to skip it because I abbreviated it. But The Menu is so good. So good. So good. And I understand the meaning. It took like the second viewing to really understand the meaning. Like why, spoiler alert, why he lets her go, how she, all that he wanted, and the most delicious looking dessert I've ever seen in my life. Especially, very much like Midsommar. It has a lot in common with Midsommar. Just burn them all alive. Anyway, this next movie, I have no idea what it is because I abbreviated it. Let's see if I could look it up real quick. We'll circle back. In the meantime, we'll see how they run. See how they run. I can't believe it went so under the radar. And those who saw it really didn't appreciate it. I thought it was absolutely brilliant, especially the dialogue, the story, the twist. I didn't solve it. I thought I did. Oh, and one of the best dream sequences ever. And the Academy Award-winning Sam Rockwell doing what he does best, cheeky comedy. I See How They Run was one of my favorite period pieces, one of my favorite murder mysteries. Just over. And Saoirse Ronan, she's fantastic in it. I absolutely loved See How They Run. I saw the trailer and I was like, this is gonna be a good time. Saw the movie and I was like, that was a good time. I love See How They Run. And it was one of my best films of the year. Like I said, the rest of these are like the best films of the year. Speaking of what I consider to be the best animated film of 2022 is Apollo 10 and a Half. I think it was on Netflix. And they're using rotoscope, the old school technique that Disney used in their original animated films, where they would film actors and then just draw over them. And there's been very few movies since then, like recent films, that have used this technique to brilliant result. Of course, the first one that comes to mind is A Scanner Darkly, starring Robert Downey Jr. and Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder. If you haven't seen A Scanner Darkly, do yourself a favor. That's a very important story based on a book, but visually stunning. The way they use rotoscope, the way, like when that one dude's having his drug trip, like that is a masterpiece. So Apollo 10 and a Half used the same technique of rotoscope, and I'd never seen a movie like that use rotoscope, especially more, I wouldn't say directed towards kids, but kid friendly, because it's the true story about a 10-year-old who went to the moon first to test things out before we sent anyone else, because he was the only one who could fit in the vessel, because they measured it wrong, because NASA makes mistakes. That's why people have died in the NASA program. All humans make mistakes. But I watched it with my 10-year-old. So we're watching a story about a 10-year-old going to space, and he's 10. But what really I enjoyed about the film that I wasn't expecting was how it was mostly just about the 60s. It was about growing up in the 60s, and it was narrated. It felt very like, an episode of Wonder Years or something. It was very nostalgic. I mean, I didn't grow up in the 60s. I wasn't alive until the 80s, but it was still nostalgic as far as being a kid before there was the internet, before there were cell phones. I'm so lucky and thankful that I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and no generation since then will ever understand the true joy of being a kid. Now it's just, give me my phone, you start at a young age of being on your phone all day, every day for the rest of your life, which sucks. But back in my day, we were kids. We were running around. We were riding bikes with baseball cards to make them sound like motorcycles. We were going in the cul-de-sac where our parents would say, "Come home when the street lights turn on." I mean, I really feel bad for my son who doesn't get to experience such things, but I do my best to share those things. It was a great watch with him and one of the best films of the year. Speaking of one of the best films of the year, this is another one that I kind of let slide under my radar because everyone was talking about it, and I would just roll my eyes because once something becomes really popular, I don't want to have anything to do with it. But boy, was I wrong. I eventually watched it on like Netflix or something when it was released on streaming. But Bullet Train. It was in my theaters, and I let it slide by. And then when I finally watched Bullet Train, that was one of the funnest, most interesting, engaging, exciting, original films I had ever seen in my life, with an all-star cast, and Brad Pitt is hilarious. So was what's his name, like Taylor Johnson. There's a lot of Taylors all over the place, but the guy who played Quicksilver in Age of Ultron, he's hilarious in that movie. Bullet Train I could watch every day for the rest of my life. It's very much like a love letter to Quentin Tarantino, I think. And it's the ending, Sandra Bullock. I mean, Bullet Train. Like that's one of my favorite films of all time. After watching it, once, and then like I said, I could watch that every single day for the rest of my life. I think I've seen it twice. It's just, I can't say enough about Bullet Train. If you've seen it, you understand exactly what I'm saying. And if you haven't, I'm sorry, you should check it out because it's well worth it. I told my dad, I was like, you would love this movie. And he was like, I loved this movie. So highly recommend Bullet Train. Okay, I got it. Had to look it up. I figured BBB, I would remember what that was abbreviated for, and I should have, because it's all the same word. Bodies. Yes, I enjoyed Bodies. Especially seeing Pete Davidson do what he does, and that ending I thought was the funniest, most ballsy thing. I figured it out. Well, I hoped that would be the case near the beginning of the film, and then I figured out that it probably was the case near the middle of the film, and then to see it at the end of the film made it all worthwhile. Mwah. Love Bodies. I guess I should mention a couple other things like Sonic the Hedgehog 2. My son was very excited for. I got to take him to that. It was great to see the giant robot as someone whose very first video game was Sonic the Hedgehog 2. That was a phenomenal. I think I enjoyed that more than the first one, and it was a delight to see that with my son. Two movies that I have to mention because I hate them so much and I can't believe everyone loves them. Tar was one of the worst movies I ever seen, and an absolute complete piece of garbage about a piece of garbage who doesn't have a redemption arc. I'm just watching this piece of garbage for 3 hours for no reason. Hated that movie. I think Tar is one of the most overrated films of all time. Glad it didn't win any Oscars. And then, The Whale. Ooh, Brendan Fraser's so great. Yeah, Brendan Fraser's great. He's always been great. He's been great at comedy. And then all of a sudden, people think that just because he was a comedic actor and then he does a dramatic role, oh my gosh, it's the best performance ever. Is he great in the movie? Yeah. Is it anything special? No, because he's just acting. And comedy will always be harder than drama. So nobody should have been surprised that Brendan Fraser is amazing. Yes, I'm glad he won an Oscar because Brendan Fraser deserves an Oscar, but not for that role. That movie was crap. Literally watching someone try to kill themselves for 2 hours with the dumbest ending ever. I hated that movie. Oh my gosh. Especially don't introduce a character like that either, or I'm really going to dislike them. And, we talked about Bullet Train. So then we come to like the best films of that year, and then of course my number one. But first I have to mention, I think I took the poster down because her name wasn't on it, but Bones and All. Great love story. Timothée Chalamet, fantastic. Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, amazing music. Should have been nominated. But first and foremost, it has Chloe Sevigny. So I have to mention it. especially to make Chloe Sevigny unappealing, which is near impossible. I think it's just American Horror Story Asylum, after what happens to her, and Bones and All. Both instances, she's all jacked up and missing limbs and whatnot. But anyway, to make her like, ew, get away from me! It's actually like my most watched short, I think, on my channel, is that clip of Chloe in Bones and All. But I had to see it because it has Chloe, and I love Chloe, and I'm trying to see every single one of her films, and the only ones I haven't seen are the ones that are like impossible to get your hands on and not available anywhere, and you can't even find the DVDs. Anyway, I love Chloe Sevigny more than any person who's ever walked the earth besides my son. I do. I love her. I have posters, I have pictures, I have autographs, I have films. About 1 year ago, she responded to one of my comments on Instagram the day before my birthday. Woo! That made my millennia. She's liked numerous of my comments. Yeah, that's a lame claim to fame, but I love her. I love her. It's proof that you can love someone that you've never met. Yeah, I do. I love Chloe, and she was insane in Bones and All. Very memorable. At least they did the voiceover. Gosh, she's got a gorgeous voice. Anyway, those are just movies I'm mentioning. Weird. Weird, isn't it? Weird. Weird. The Al Yankovic story. Blew my freaking mind. I'm a lifelong Weird Al fan, and so is my son. And so, well, not lifelong, but my dad was as well. Weird Al's first album came out the year I was born. I've seen Weird Al in concert like 14 times, I believe. It was my first concert with my father. It was my son's first concert with my father and I. My son has seen him in concert numerous times, and my son and I even met him. Big Weird Al fan. Love UHF. Love all of his cameos and anything. Love all of his music. So hearing about this movie, and Daniel Radcliffe, they just, I can't, I would go on and on and on, but Weird is just brilliant. Weird is just brilliant. It's brilliant. One of the greatest comedies I've ever seen in my life. It perfectly captures exactly what a melodramatic, what's the word? Biopic. And exactly what they do, especially with music ones. Very much so like Bohemian Rhapsody and what have you. And how they will be over the top, it won't all be true, there will always be lip syncing. You know, you might think, oh, but Daniel Radcliffe doesn't, with the lip syncing. Yeah, that's the point. It's supposed to be bad. Like, that is a brilliant film with a brilliant new song by Weird Al in the credits. Oh, stay for it. There's fake out endings. The way it ends, oh, I had no idea that Weird Al tragically. Spoiler alert. Every actor in it is phenomenal. Every cameo is phenomenal. Every joke lands. It is so ridiculous and over the top. It's the best biopic I've ever seen, while perfectly being exactly what a biopic is, while making fun of how ridiculous that is. Daniel Radcliffe was phenomenal. Weird, the Al Yankovic story, one of the greatest films I've ever seen. And everyone should be raving about it, because it's hilarious. Lost another one down at the factory. Told him to stay away from that darn grinder. Anyway, there's an opening down at the factory if you want to apply. That guy's great. And I recently saw him in Fatal Attraction. Okay. All Quiet on the Western Front. There's like, what, Saving Private Ryan. And now All Quiet on the Western Front, as far as movies that are like, oh my gosh, war is hell. War is hell. This sucks. But like Saving Private Ryan, it was mainly that opening sequence. The entire runtime of All Quiet on the Western Front, the new one released last year that was nominated for Oscars and I believe deservedly won one, that movie blew my freaking mind. It was absolutely phenomenal. Like from the very beginning of here's the uniforms from the dead soldiers, let's reuse them for the new soldiers. Like everything, like it is so traumatic and horrific. And then in the end, you know, the war's over. Well, we're going to keep fighting and you're going to die anyway. Ha ha ha. And your main character's name's Paul. I don't know if you knew this, but my name's Paul. So I'm following this guy, Paul, hoping he doesn't die. And then, Man, what a messed up movie. Talk about impactful. That's got to be the best war movie I've ever seen. And it literally opens where everything's all quiet on the Western Front and ends with, oh, and all those people died for no reason, just to get a few feet of ground. War is hell. And that movie perfectly depicts that. It's hell the entire runtime, but an absolute masterpiece. Here's a movie talking about absolute masterpiece that people talk a lot of garbage about. It's called Blonde. It's not about Marilyn Monroe. I think that threw people off. Oh, no. It's based on a book that was an exaggeration of some of her life. It's not meant to be accurate. If it was about any other random woman, I think it would get more attention. But they just made it about Marilyn to make it, more recognizable. But her performance, that actress, oh my gosh, very much deserved it of her Oscar nomination. And that movie, made by the guy who made The Assassination of Jesse James by the Coward Robert Ford. And that other one that I just recently saw with Brad Pitt. I can't remember the name, but The Assassination of Jesse James is like one of my favorite films of all time. It's an absolute masterpiece. But Blonde, I have never seen techniques used in film like this from beginning to end. Like every single scene or sequence has some kind, like this is filmmaking. This is how you make film. This is how you craft art. Blonde is a masterpiece. I can't believe it got an NC-17 rating. I think it was the only NC-17 movie I've ever seen. And I don't even think it's because of the sex scenes. I think it's because of the inside a female's privates, I guess, automatically get to that rating, which some people find that part to be over the top or too much. But no, it's depicting like the trauma of going through things like, say, abortion. Oh no, I said that word. Am I going to get demonetized now? Traumatic stuff. But overall, that film is a freaking opus of a masterpiece. Masterpiece. One of the best directed films I think I've ever seen. A perfect ending. All of it. All of, like that. Although that one transition when she's with those two men and then it goes to the waterfall. It's filmmaking at its best. It's art at its best, which is probably why I got everybody all riled up. Because people get offended by art. Because when other people express themselves, sometimes people get offended. Oh my gosh, it's a naked woman. Oh my God. No, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Speaking of a masterpiece that covers everything I just said, Bardo. Bardo and the blah, 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 one of those long titles. Now, this is the same director who brought us 21 Grams, which I'm literally watching right now. He also brought us Babel, which I just watched yesterday, and it was one of the hardest, most traumatic viewing experiences of my life, but a masterpiece. He also brought us Birdman with Michael Keaton, another masterpiece. And then he brought us The Revenant, which I barely remember watching. I only watched it for Tom Hardy, but it got Leonardo the Oscar. But I need to rewatch that because that's a masterpiece too, I'm sure. But Bardo, available on Netflix. I have never seen anything like it. By far, probably the best, well, one of the 2 or 3 best films of the year, depending on what category you're going with. But Bardo, because Birdman is all one shot, Bardo, but it's like cheat cuts. Bardo has so many scenes that for 5, 10 to 15 minutes really are one shot, and it's produced almost like a stage play, where when the camera's moving this way, you're moving this over here, because it's also like a psychological thing. Like, what is going on? Everything you're seeing doesn't really make very sense. From the opening shot until the very end, when you click, oh, this whole time I've been watching brilliant. Changed my life. Changed my outlook and my perspective on my life, how I value my life, how I appreciate life, how I cherish every moment with my child. Not that I didn't already, but Bardo will really put things in perspective for you, especially if you can get over the fact that you don't necessarily understand everything for most of its runtime. You just know that something's off, something's not right, but every sequence is just mind-blowing. of brilliant filmmaking, of art and expression. And then you get to the end when it all clicks of what you've been watching this whole time, and it all makes so much more sense and makes it an overall one of the most brilliant films I have ever seen in my life. Period. Hands down, without a doubt. Bardo. Ah, I need to watch that again. But I canceled my Netflix. Now I'm gonna get Netflix back so I can watch Bardo again, because that is a freaking genius masterpiece that deserved every Oscar nomination, but at least it did get Best Cinematography, obviously, because I've never seen anything like that. And this is in-camera stuff. This isn't like CG cheating. It's a freaking masterpiece. It's a masterpiece. You need to watch Bardo. You just need to watch Bardo, okay? And what I considered, I think, like, tied with number one as like the best film of the year, but I guess a technicality put it as the runner-up because it's a documentary. It's called Senior. Again, on Netflix. I had Netflix for a while and I knocked out everything that I really wanted to catch up on. Senior is a documentary by Robert Downey Jr. Well, he didn't direct it, but it's about Robert Downey Jr. and his father. And I just thought it was going to be a cheeky little, oh, this is my dad. But it delved into his dad's life and their relationship, because it was kind of like they knew that his dad didn't have much longer, and they're documenting Robert Downey Jr.'s, final time with his father. And by the end, I was in tears. Very much so. Talk about a Father's Day film. We got Father's Day coming up in 1 week. I highly recommend, whether you're with your father or not, preferably with your father, watch Senior. That'll change your life, and it'll change your relationship with your father for the better. I promise you. That movie should have gotten way more attention. Should have won Best Documentary at the Oscars. Like, so touching. So touching. And it taught me so much, not just about, his Robert Downey Jr.'s father's history in Hollywood, but the history of Hollywood in general. Very fascinating film. Great watch. Watch Senior on Father's Day next Sunday, the 18th. 3 days after I turned 40. I almost said 30. 40. And last but not least is the number one most impactful film of last year, 2022, which is pretty obvious. Because it's everything, everywhere, all at once. Isn't that one of the best titles ever? I saw the trailer for Everything Everywhere All at Once, and immediately watching that trailer was like, this is going to be one of the greatest movies ever made, isn't it? Then we got the poster in at work. I have, like, both. I love them. The eyeballs are over here. And then someone told me, oh, yeah, I'm excited about that new Daniels movie. And I'm like, Daniels? They're like, oh, Everything Everywhere All at Once. Oh, right. Well, what have they done? They're like, oh, they did Swiss Army Man. I was like, what? So that's how I really became, like, familiar, because I'd seen Swiss Army Man. But then I was like, oh, those guys. This really is going to be something special. And in the theater, whoo, we all know. I was blown away. My first viewing, I kind of couldn't grasp the ending and really what the movie was saying. So I was like, yeah, I was a little let down by the ending because, it was just about family. But no. Once I understood, like, that's one of the greatest movies ever made, period. I think it's in my top 5 greatest films of all time, in my opinion. And I love the true moral of that story and its meaning about how everything is meaningless. Nothing matters. And that's a good thing. And then I'll never forget watching, getting up early to watch the Oscar nominations, being thrilled about all its 11 nominations. And then I was like, it's going to win 8 of them. It won 7. I was close. Dune only won 6. And should have been nominated for Best Director. And won Best Picture. But anyway, Everything Everywhere All at Once, I knew had a chance, but was blown away a year after its release. That it gave Jamie Lee Curtis, the actress, the supporting actor, the supporting actress, all these Oscars to these three actors that have deserved an Oscar for their entire lives, and finally giving them their recognition. And on top of that, giving the Daniels Oscars for writing and directing, and then giving it Best Picture. That was the greatest thing the Oscars have ever done, is giving a movie like Everything Everywhere All at Once Best Picture, which I didn't think would happen. I've got my reaction on this channel because I couldn't help myself. I was so excited. But I have hot dog fingers, I have eyeball shirts. I love that movie. But I didn't think it had a chance of winning Best Picture simply because, even though it was Best Picture, simply because I was like, the Oscars are never going to give Best Picture to a film that features dildo assaults and butt plug fights. And then the Academy gave Best Picture to a film featuring butt plug fights and dildo assault. Everything Everywhere All at Once is one of the most important movies ever made. The Daniels wanted to make a movie about their mothers being their heroes and make a big MCU film on a low budget, and holy crap, did they ever. Everyone knows now that it's an absolute masterpiece. And I'm just thankful that it got its just desserts, and boy, did it affect my life. I remember taking my dad to see it, and he he knew nothing about it. He'd never seen a trailer. He didn't know what we were in for. It was probably a mistake, because he couldn't comprehend most of the movie, and then by the end, he had no idea what he saw. But it was an experience, the two of us, in that Dolby Theater. And there you have it. 40 years of film. I only went over a fraction of the films that not only I've seen, but that have had a big impact on me, but I had to make these videos as short as possible. And here I am. I'm going to be 40 in 4 days. And all of the films that I've talked about in these 40 plus videos are a big part of why I am who I am today. And I look forward to another 40 years, God willing, of more amazing films. Thanks for sticking around. Especially if you've watched the entirety of all of these videos, you get a cookie. But yeah, thanks. And thus ends this journey and begins another. Okie dokie.